Ah, the Nintendo 64. Gamers of a certain age have memories of hours of multiplayer fun. The system, though not the most advanced, even at the time of its release, was revolutionary, and its emphasis on 4-player gaming paved the way for today's Xbox Live and PlayStation Network. When you think of the Nintendo 64, classic titles come to mind, including Mario 64, GoldenEye, the Banjo-Kazooie series, and Xena Warrior Princess. Wait. Yes, Xena Warrior Princess, the Talisman of Fate, based on the TV series starring Lucy Lawless, was released by Titus in 1999. Titus released a number of games for the 64, including Blues Brothers 2000, Virtual Chess, Automobile Lamborghini, and, well, enough said. Xena as a character made her first appearance on Hercules The Legendary Journeys starring Kevin Sorbo, and was later spun off into her own show. Titus produced games for both franchises. The one based on Hercules is a 3D action-adventure game where you can play as multiple characters and have to solve puzzles and go on quests in order to thwart the god Ares' evil plans. It's like a poor man's Ocarina of Time. I picked up the Xena game for $3 at a local flea market. I'd heard of it, but had never seen any gameplay footage. I imagined it to be similar in style to the Hercules title. Boy, was I wrong. Xena Warrior Princess, the Talisman of Fate, is a 3D fighter. The setup is that Xena and Despair, the minion of Dahak and the main baddie of the game, have been fighting fiercely for control of the talisman. Whoever possesses the talisman will have the power to rule the universe, or at least that's what the intro cinematic establishes. The premise is kind of like Mortal Kombat, with Xena playing the Raiden role, choosing representatives from the world's best fighters to keep the talisman from falling into the wrong hands. Further like Mortal Kombat, not every character's reason for pursuing the talisman is selfless, and this plays into the different endings in the story mode. The roster of characters covers the gamut of the show's run, including Xena herself, Gabrielle her sidekick, villains Ares and Callisto, and even Groovy Bruce himself, Autolycus. Perhaps most important of all is you can play as Joxer. Yes, a video game where you can play as Ted Raimi. I think this may be the only time this has happened in history. I approve highly of this and wish there was more appearances of Raimi. What a waste not including Hoffman as a playable character in the Spider-Man movie series or O'Neill and Sequest. Oh well. Admittedly, Joxer's inclusion is a total joke. They even poke fun at it in the game's intro. But even though the character is one of the worst in the games, his inclusion is totally worth it for his theme. Check it out! I mean, come on, this is just hilarious! Like pretty much every other fighter since the beginning of time, you take on a number of the characters, both heroes and villains, in best of 3 bouts, making your way to the final fight against Despair. Xena is the penultimate opponent, and Despair is the last, whether you play as a hero or a villain. Once Despair is bested, your victory is applauded as a cutscene is shown with your character grasping the talisman. Now, I haven't beaten the game with everyone, but the majority of the endings had the character relinquishing control of the talisman back to the Fates, restoring the balance of the world. Even Autolycus, the Thief King, turns down the talisman, on the flimsy excuse that he wouldn't have to steal again. The endings aren't very in-depth, including no more than a still image or two with a couple sentences explaining why or why not your character returned or kept the talisman. I really can't complain about this, as even A-list fighters of the 90s didn't have elaborate endings, so you can't fault Titus for this. The replay value of this game is very low, at least in terms of story mode, as there's not much variety. You pick a character, fight a bunch of other characters, take on Xena, take on Despair, claim or reject the talisman, rinse and repeat. It gets stale after the 3rd playthrough. The graphics take advantage of the capabilities of the cartridge-based 64 as much as any other title. The sprites don't look any worse than any other licensed game for the system, and capture the actors' licenses fairly well. Upon my first impressions, before doing some research, I thought that the control scheme was very awkward and unintuitive. Upon spending further time with it, the controls are not that different from any other N64 fighters, for the most part. The controls for most Nintendo 64 fighting games are based on a 6-button arcade layout, with the A and B buttons usually being a weak attack, C left and C down being a medium attack, and C up and C right being fierce attacks. Xena deviates from that formula slightly. C up and C right are strong attacks, C left and C down are weak attacks, but there are no medium attacks. The A button is completely unused, while the B button, factoring in the 3D aspect of the game, is used to align your aim on your foe. I fully understand why they need to map this function to one of the buttons, but this task could easily be moved to L, again unused in this game. Another issue is that in order to jump, you press, of all buttons, R. You could say that this is because the game is a 3D fighter and pressing up can move you around the circumference of the stage, but I've played other fighters with similar styles where you can still jump by pressing up on the stick or D-pad. At least you have the option of moving your character with either the analog stick or the D-pad. On first playthrough, getting acquainted with this style, I thought a lobotomized dyslexic monkey on methamphetamines could have programmed a better control layout. I've now eased back my viewpoint on this since I've spent more time with the game for this review, so the control has some major issues, but it's not really that far removed from other Nintendo 64 fighters overall. In regards to the game's moves, simple button mashing can ensure easy success, though there are special moves that are mostly performed by charging back to forward and pressing one of the attack buttons. Combos are fairly easy to pull off as well, by holding back on the stick or pad and pressing a combination of weak and strong attacks. In addition to the standard strong and weak standing attacks, you can press the Z button to crouch and hit the C buttons to perform secondary attacks, including sword up thrusts and rolling maneuvers. The soundtrack fits the vibe of the show, with each stage and character having unique themes. Tunes range from mysterious to tribal to jokey, and with the exception of the Joxer theme, they're neither forgettable nor particularly memorable. They function more as a background to enhance the environment and mood. One factor that sets Talisman of Fate apart from most other fighters is its sense of humor. Right from that Joxer joke in the intro, you can tell that the game doesn't take itself too seriously. You can taunt your opponents by pressing all C buttons simultaneously. There's also a number of humorous cheats you can implement by holding A and pressing right, right, left, left, right, left, right. You'll hear a tone indicating success. This is the entry code for each cheat, which require further button combinations to activate. For example, pressing A after inputting the above code will give every character on screen big hands and feet. Pressing C up twice and then A will make the characters look like they came straight out of Virtua Fighter. One of the funnier ones is pressing C left, C up, C right, C down. Despair, the menacing big bad guy, is clad in a bunny suit after this code is enabled. What a sight that is! You haven't lived until you've seen two bunny despairs fighting to the death. I can't take him seriously when he says he's gonna kill me wearing that costume. He keeps insisting, but all I want to do is give him a big hug. His words may be threatening, but he's just a big softy on the inside, crippled by insecurities. It's okay, Despair. Let it out. You'll feel better for it. As awesome as the bunny Despair is, I think my favorite cheat is pressing C right 3 times, C down 3 times, then the A button. This unleashes a fury of, from what can be assumed from the sound effects, invisible birds that peck at your opponents until they succumb to their wounds. This is a very cheap way to beat the game, but it's just funny walking around your foe, especially when taunting them with Autolycus' ass while they die from some unseen force. In this case, probably Autolycus' mean burrito farts. Lay off the Mexican man! The Nintendo 64 is famous for its multiplayer, and Xena is one of the few fighting games for the system that has simultaneous 4-player action. While its combat can't compare to Smash Bros. Or GoldenEye in fun factor, there's still plenty of enjoyment to be had, especially when you mess around with the cheats. Xena Warrior Princess. It's definitely an oddity for the console. The story mode is monotonous, the control is far from user-friendly, and it comes from a developer known for their quality titles. But all things considered, I think I'd have to recommend it. If only for the novelty factor of owning a game based on Xena Warrior Princess, add in its comic nature, furthered by all the cheats, and the fact that even online you can pick up the game for less than $5, and you've got a fun time killer. So suit up, grab your chakram, shout your battle cry, preferably with a few friends, and be prepared to experience one of the most unique games in the Nintendo 64 library.